So now that the interior's wiring's done for now, enough to get it running and driving the critical stuff, I'm going to work on the wiring for the engine bay area. And I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and get the computer moved. Now that I know this runs, happy with that. And now that I'm on to wiring this side of it, actually connecting things more permanently, might as well move this. So I went ahead and went out to the Mustang and made a template for the hole that this grommet runs through. So I'm going to put that, there's a giant hole here for some reason that somebody obviously punched in, so we can get rid of that, I think, and put that harness plug through there. I need to check it on the inside, but I don't think there's anything over here, and I don't think this would interfere with the future, like a vintage air system. I don't think. I hope I'm correct. So that'll avoid the factory heater core stuff there and the fan blower and all that. So and probably while I do this, or when I do this, I think I'll lower this loom here, the factory Mustang loom. I'm thinking about dropping it down a scotch, see if I can't run it underneath the wiper motor and underneath the master cylinder, or the booster, brake booster, sorry. So that's what I'm thinking. I don't know if that's really going to make much difference to drop it down there. Maybe it won't be quite so obvious. I don't know. Maybe I'll leave it there. I'll worry about moving the computer right now. Get that mounted on the inside somehow. That's probably going to take me 40 hours for as slow as I work. But we'll get going on that. Got the hole cut out. I think it'll work. Template seems to fit into it just fine, or just barely. I think that'll be a decent spot for it. It's never going to hide it with the way I'm doing it, but I think that'll be fine, I think. Here we are with the harness plug installed into the firewall. Nice fit there. Looks factory, but this, I think what bugs me the most about this Mustang harness is not so much that the wires are going across there. It's just this wire loom cover just looks weird on this truck, just because they didn't use that in the early days, but either they didn't use fuel injected 5 liters either, so it is what it is. So with that in mind, I think what I'm going to do is bump this harness up to this level here where the factory wiring went. There's already keepers there that I can maybe use to zip tie to. So I'm going to try that and just see how that looks. So I'm not going for the hidden look anyway. I know this truck runs off wires, so I don't necessarily care if I hide them, but if I run them up there, it keeps them away from the heat and elements, which, you know, running it down low around the engine and stuff could, whatever, I don't know. The harness sure fits in there well for not being for this vehicle, so I'm fine with running it across there, tying it into where it goes into the cab, and then this of course will drop down for the engine stuff. Some of the engine stuff's here, which maybe that won't reach if I put it up there. I don't know. I'll play with it a little bit, but I think I still have the CPU or the computer mount out of the Mustang that I can probably put on the inside to secure the computer into the area down here. So let me get the light better here. You can see where it comes in up there. Plenty of room, so I can probably just mount it somewhere in the kick panel area here. So I'll play with that a little bit more in the future and see where that goes. I've rearranged the wiring just a hair on the firewall. As you can see, it's going above that lip instead of below, which is where the factory wiring, I believe, goes. So not a big change, but I think I like it a little bit more up there. I had to reroute this wire here that goes to the distributor. It went down and around, and believe it or not, moving it up to that level was just a little too tight. So I'll just come across here for now, probably secured across those hoses, so you can't really notice that it's even going there, and then route it across there or something like that. But now that I've got it going through the firewall, I've been working on where to install the computer in the, or the ECU, or whatever you want to call it. So this is what I've come up with. This is just made out of some junk sheet metal. You can see I've cut it out of that. It's an old battery backup box or something, I don't know. So I just bent it up, made a slot to run through there, and it's going to mount where the kick panel is. So this, and I'll show you in a second, this will be flush with the kick panel. I've drilled and tapped a couple holes. That one ended up being in a bad spot, so I'm moving it over, and I'll show you on the inside. But the metal here and here ended up, it's double thick, so I went ahead and just tapped it at 1/4 inch instead of running sheet metal screws through it. This hole I'm not going to be able to use right now. I can't get a drill in there where the heater box is, so maybe when I get the heater core out at some point I'll finish that, or it doesn't really need it. And then down here is just a sheet metal screw, but it's mostly secured with this zip tie here. I didn't have a long enough one, so you can see how I did that. It just came through. The head of it's just holding it from pulling through, and then I just cut a head off of another zip tie. So it's not fancy, but it holds it in there good, as does the way I bent this over. It pinches the computer in there. The holes, the vent holes look good. You know, looks like that was on purpose, but it's not. It's not for venting. Although that wouldn't hurt to do that because it is the computer. But so I'll hang it in there and I'll show you what that looks like installed. And here's what we look like installed. This isn't completely flat through here, if you can see where my finger's pointing. So I just cut a notch out so I could bend this, so this could be flexed around that, but maybe I ought to just cut that off. And I think I'll leave it for now, but it's plenty sturdy in there with these 1/4 inch bolt here and there, and then just a sheet metal screw down there. So in theory, my kick panel should cover that. If I had to space the kick panel out a little bit, it wouldn't hurt nothing. I could put some spacers behind this thing that holds the kick panel in. It kind of messed up my spot here for the dome light, so the computer's just right there. So I guess I'll just plug that. I can live without a dome light on the passenger side, I guess. It's not the end of the world. Or I could relocate it to a different spot later on. I tried to put the computer so the plug was at the bottom, but I didn't quite have enough wire to do that in the factory loom. So the computer actually slides into the door jamb a little bit. You can see it right here. So that's as far as I can get my finger in there. Lots of clearance on the inside, on this side, the fender side. So this will have to come out in order to bolt my fenders back on, but three things to take off and them out. So I still have to hook up these wires here, and then there's a relay hanging down here as well. This mostly goes to the fuel pump relay, I think. I've got to figure all that out still. And then I still don't know what this plug does. So I'll do some more research and see if I can figure out what that one does. But I'll show you up here if I can. So the wire, goes up and over that factory piece there. Lots of clearance, not rubbing nothing, and then drops right down in that space. I don't know if I can, I can't really see it any better, but anyway, it gives you an idea. This is a nice out of spot place, I think, to put it. It's in the interior, so it'll stay safe, I guess. And that's basically the same place it was in the Mustang, was up in the kick panel area. So the factory wiring all reaches. So let's go over reusing these factory plugs for the Mustang, the 1990 Mustang harness. What I'm wired into these to get this thing to run. I didn't document this very well when I just got it kind of running earlier. Figured I'd get into it a little bit more at this point when I'm wiring it permanently. So you got these two plugs. This is the body side, so you want to cut these off of the car if you pull it out of the wrecking yard or whatever. Make sure you get as much length of wire as you can, so you can make mistakes and cut them shorter. And then you've got these here. These are the engine bay side, so that goes into the factory harness. A lot of these wires aren't used, so I'll show you what I used, or this is all information I looked up on the internet. What I did find is that these wire colors change depending on the year. So this is correct for 1990. It may be different for the year you're using, so you'll want to verify pretty much the location of the wire, where it goes into the plug, and which color that wire should be in your vehicle. Sorry, my tripod skills are crappy. So we'll just go through the wires here, and I'll show you what I've wired up. So we've got the white wire with a red stripe. That's my oil pressure gauge. So that will go and use the factory wiring that goes across the engine to the oil pressure gauge sender. I'm reusing that. And that has a wire in my harness, my new harness. So that feeds into the engine, into the dash. We have a solid red wire here, and this wire is not included with the wiring harness because this is part of the like the fuel pump relay and the inertia switch, which these body harnesses don't come with that stuff. I guess it's considered engine side or something. So I had to run my own wire to that, but that gives up hot to the inertia switch, which is what will turn your fuel pump off if you get in a wreck or hit something really hard. So I would recommend using that in these trucks because you get in a wreck and the fuel pump just keeps running, which could be disastrous to say the least. Then we've got a tan wire with a light green stripe, so that goes to the fuel pump relay. And I think what that does is it tells the computer when the fuel pump is on or when it's running. I could be wrong about that, but I'm going to connect this wire to the same color one that's on my fuel pump relay, which I would recommend if you're doing this and you're pulling harnesses out of the wrecking yard or have a car like I've got as a donor, make sure you can get that fuel pump relay and then inertia switch out of that car. That way you don't have to wire it all from scratch. You can just reuse those parts. They're good parts, assuming it's not corroded or whatever. But so anyway, that looks like a tan with a light green. So that one, again, there's no wire for that in my new harness, so I just bought a green wire to run through that over to there. Now we've got a white wire with a purple stripe, which I'm not using. In my wiring diagram, that says for automatics only, and it's the neutral safety switch, or neutral safety switch starter, something like that. Anyway, originally I believe I pigtailed this one and the other, what's it called? I think it's blue with or red with a light blue. These went together because that's the manual transmission neutral safety switch. So I think you just pigtail those together to get it just to run barely. But anyway, so at this point I'm not using this wire. I don't think I need to, so that'll just remain loose in the harness. And then I've got 3 other wires here that let's see, we got a gray with red, which is something that goes to the clutch sensing circuit. I don't know what that is. I don't think I need it. It might be for cruise control or something, or I might have to come back and use it. But so gray with a red stripe I'm not using. White with we already went with white with purple. Light blue and yellow is supposed to be the another neutral safety to the Higo. I don't think I need that, so I'm not going to use that either. And then we got this yellow with red, which I actually don't have written down what that is. It's the very bottom here. In fact, I might not have a reference to what that does at all. As far as I can tell, I don't need that wire, so that one's going to stay here in this black plug. Again, I might realize later I need it. If I do, I'll try to update this later on, so in my future videos if I did. But I'm going off you know, stuff I'm looking up off the internet of what it needs to actually get this thing running, and a lot of this stuff isn't, you know, doesn't get used. So that covers the black plug. And now we got the gray plug here, and we've got, let's try to start in a corner here. So we got a red with a green stripe. See if I can't get this all twisted up, make a mess out of it. And that one is to the tachometer, so that's again red with a blue stripe. No wait, sorry, I'm getting tossed, turned around here. Red with blue is that was that other it goes to the TFI, and this would be for crank only. So this isn't hot when the ignition's on. It's only hot as you're turning the key over. So it's wired here. It's spliced in these two wires here, and that goes to the starter solenoid. So when you're cranking the engine over, this one sends a hot signal to the TFI. And then we've got a red with a green, and that's ignition run. So that should have positive when you're cranking it over and when it's running. And then we've got an AC here, which I'm not using right now, but that will go your AC pump. And we've got an orange with a black stripe, and I'm not sure what that does, so we're not using it right now. I've got a black with a yellow stripe, not using that one right now, not sure what it does. And then the tack is that's kind of a tan with a yellow stripe, so there's a wire for that in the harness, as well as there's wires for the starter solenoid, and then also that run positive, the ignition on. So those come with my wiring harness. And then we've got a white with a red stripe, and that is the low oil pressure sender, which I took that out. That goes in the side of the oil pan, so that would, I guess, go to like the light on the dash. So I'm not using that guy, so I'm leaving that one. And I've got a pink with a light blue, and I'm not sure what that does, so that one's not being included. So that is the black and the gray plug. So I think that's what I need for mine to run with what I need. Like this stuff can be kind of annoying. The fact that they changed the colors through the years, it's a little more tedious to go through and look through the diagrams. You just got to find the right one for your year vehicle when you're doing this, so you don't make a mistake and fry something or it won't work. So that covers that. We'll move on to the next step here. I've got the coil mounted, which I went ahead and stuck on the firewall here. This bolt hole here is a factory hole, and then I drilled this one and that one. These tabs I didn't have to bend. That's the factory Mustang bracket. This one down here I had to bend on the vise to it kind of went at a weird angle because of where it was on the Mustang, and then I cut the tab off a little bit. This one was a little bit longer, so I like that. I was going to mount it right here on the fender, but the original wires from this plug here wouldn't reach, so I decided on that. I will have to make a longer wire to the distributor cap, but that's not a big deal. And I like it there. If I want to take this inner fender off again to work on stuff, it's one less thing I got to mess with. So right now I'm working on the power feed to the ECU. The Mustang, the starter or the solenoid was out here on the fender, so this is where everything got its power from, and then that one ran over to the battery or starter and then battery, whatever. But the battery was right here. Oh wait, no. Yeah, sorry. So the battery was here. It would feed the power at the solenoid, and then this stuff connects to that, but then there was that other wire that goes to the starter. Anyway, these have a fusible link on them. So that's a 20 gauge fusible link feeding a 16 gauge wire. I want to replace this with a breaker instead of a fusible link. These degrade over time. They don't recommend using a fuse, a regular like a maxi fuse, because these fusible links are designed to take a little bit more amp draw than just what they're rated at. So for like a startup of the electric motor, there's a little bit of a peak at the beginning, and then it settles back down, and these are more durable than a fuse, and I guess in that situation. So a breaker should be sufficient. I got to do some research and figure out what size. I can't remember. I think it was a 10 amp breaker, but I'm going to double check what appropriate size is for a 16 gauge wire. Anyway, so the other thing I'm doing is, since the power feeds from over here in the stock harness, my battery and everything's over there, I've opened up the harness here, and I'm going to tap in to that orange and black wire over here and run it to, I'm going to put I don't know if I'm going to put a fuse panel here or just a power distribution block with the breakers. I need to research what I want to do in that regard, but I think I'll put it right here on the fender. and then I can get power either directly from the battery, or I'll probably just run down and go to the starter. I haven't decided that. I might go to the battery because then I can avoid the heat and routing around the header there, since the battery's just in there. So anyway, so power distribution block here, tap into the feed in the loom here. I'll probably go ahead and reconnect the wire going that way, and that would give me a power connection for something over there. Maybe, I haven't decided. I was going to run this wire from the new wiring harness to this wire, you know, and tie it in that way so I don't have to run that one all the way across. But this is a 14 gauge wire and the other one's a 16, so I don't want a 16 gauge feeding a 14, so I'll go ahead and run this wire clear over to the distribution block so it's everything's rated correctly, because if you know, you're always as strong as your weakest link. So if I put, you know, if I feed a 16 to a 14, then what's the point in having a 14? So, and they rated this for this fuse panel, so I don't want to derate their stuff. I'm sure they know what they're doing over me. So anyway, so that's what I'm working on. I need to do a little more research on what fuse panel to buy, or power distribution block and breakers. Well, I'm just wrapping up for the day. I'd taken the day off of work today because it was supposed to start cooling off. Turns out the forecast was a day off and the cool down's tomorrow, so I'm still working in an oven in here, but made some pretty good progress, I think. I've got the alternator wiring mostly done, which that's I'm reusing the factory harnesses from the Mustang, running them up fender well here, and then tying into the harness, the painless harness here. Then I've got my solenoid wire ran. It also goes down. I just ran it down here and then goes straight back underneath the exhaust there, so it ties to the motor mount, so there's lots of clearance for keeping the heat off of it. So with some more thinking about power distribution block, what I might just do is just a big breaker, like a 150 amp breaker, because the painless kit comes with a fused breaker. I guess it's not a breaker if it's fused, but anyway, it comes with a distribution block as a fuse in it. I'd rather not run that just because, you know, if it's a weird fuse and if it blows somewhere, I'm SOL. So I'm going to order a resettable breaker. So I'll mount that on the fender. That'll get my battery input, and then I can have multiple connections to that, including another small breaker that runs to the fuel pump. So that's what I'm thinking for that. And this alternator charge wire will go to that, as well as the feed for the fuse panel, and then the ECU feed here. These are all constant power, if I remember right, so I'll go back over that. I took the intake off so it was cleaner to work in here. Again, nothing too exciting. On the other side, I was going to put my fuel pump relay inside with the ECU, but after I started tracking down what wires need to feed it, I felt it would be better to just put it over here on the driver's side. You know, a lot of guys, they like to go for the clean firewall look. I think I'm going to be the complete opposite. I'm going to just fill this firewall up with everything I got, and I'm going to go for the clean fender well look. So that might be the new cool trend in the future. Just clutter up your firewall and keep everything else clean. No, just kidding. A lot of guys just hide everything somewhere else, but I don't. You know, I'm not concerned with that at this point. So anyway, this little fused, relay bracket's off the Mustang. That's what the fuel pump relay was hanging on the car. I rebent it to mount it there on the firewall, and it's got a little push-in thing that secures it, so that'll just fit up in there. Gives me room for an extra one over here at some point. But it had feeds from the black connector here. It's got a feed to it, and then in fact there might be. It ties in with that inertia switch too, because the inertia switch turns this off. So anyway, so this feeds in here. One of them goes to the black connector. Another wire goes to the inertia switch, what I'll show you. I mounted it on the inside. And then we have ignition power. So I just fed it off the coil wire here, it's fed with a 30 amp and it's a ignition switch. So I just teed into that in this loom, so it's going to the coil and the fuel pump relay. So that seemed to be the easiest for less wires going back and forth. If I were to put that on the other end, like I was going to do by the ECU, I'd need to run several other wires. So I don't know, maybe it's a bad idea, but from what I've seen, the fuel pump relay, when I took it out of the Mustang, it's underneath the driver's seat. I don't know why they did that, but in other years, it was actually mounted over there outside the firewall by the ECU. So I think that's why I was thinking to put it over there. But like I said, after I worked it out in my head, that's scary, I know, but I decided to put it here. So we'll see. It's like I said, the coil's there, those plugs are there. It's a big mess. Who cares? You know, whatever. And then on the inside here, I wasn't sure where I wanted to mount the inertia switch, and this is what I decided to do. Was just it'll be covered by the rocker panel here. I'll just have to make note that that's where it is, so if my fuel pump doesn't turn on, I'll remember to check that. Sometimes I think to get you can hit a bump or something real hard, maybe set that off. So I don't know how common that is, but something to consider. And then let me do a little wider view here, and that just feeds up and over. Same way I ran the dimmer switch wires. It just goes up and over and then swoops over to the main loom there. So nothing exciting, but I've got the ignition switch hanging out here. I realized that there's basically a north-south of that, and up and a down, and I put it in upside down. So the little tangs that bite into the dash here, one of them's bigger than the other one, and I had it backwards. So I'm gonna have to just loosen up all the connections and make it so the wires come into that the other way. I haven't got around to doing that yet. I just have it hanging there, but that's why that's not in the dash anymore. So that'll be a project for another day. But I'm happy with the progress I'm making. It's slow. Well, I'm slow rather. I think I just have a tendency to overcomplicate things in my mind and overthink things. And again, going back to tracing the wire colors down, the schematics and things like that, I wouldn't consider this hard. It's just time consuming. So, you know, I wouldn't let it intimidate you, but definitely, you know, take your time and go slow about it. It's worth doing, because you really don't want gremlins in your electrical system. So I'm probably going to have some, even though I am taking my time and all that. But hopefully, if I do it good enough to begin with, that there'll be less chance of that later on. But so I think that's it for now. I'll hopefully hit it again next weekend or something. We'll make some more progress.